Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to make a denim shirt with a touch of Ankara fabric. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so by clicking the subscribe button down, and also don't forget to click the bell so that whenever I post a new video you get notified immediately of new sewing tutorials or DIY sewing. And I want to say a big thank you to my viewers and subscribers. You guys are really encouraging me to produce more content for you guys, and thank you for your support. Thank you for everything. So I'm definitely encouraged to make more sewing tutorials. So let's get into the video. I'm going to be making a denim shirt with this, with buttons in front, and then I'm going to be using this Ankara fabric, this African print fabric, to sort of give it a little nice African touch. So I have folded my fabric in two, so I'm going to mark my shoulder measurement divided by 2 plus ½ inch allowance. Then I go ahead to mark my arm sky length plus ½ inch allowance as well. So right now I'm going to be marking my bust measurement divided by 4 plus 1 inch of sewing allowance, and then I join both points. So I go ahead and mark my arm sky depth of 1½ inches at 45 degrees, and then I use my French curve to draw out the curve from top to bottom. So now these are my measurements listed here, so I'm going to be marking them on the fabric. So after bust measurement, I go ahead and do my under bust plus ½ inch allowance to all vertical measurements. My round measurement for under bust divided by 4 plus 1 inch dart allowance, and then 1 inch joining or sewing allowance. I go ahead and join those points as well. I do the same for my natural waistline. Now what I'm doing here is for the back portion of the shirt I'll be making, and this is because your shirt, the back portion is not open, is no zip at all. So for the hip measurement or the length of blouse, I add 1 inch of an allowance. That's because I'm going to be joining both top and bottom, and then I do what I do for the round measurements for natural waistline to the hip. I go ahead and join the markings that I have done, waistline to hip or bottom of the shirt, and then bust to waistline as well. The next thing I do after this is to curve out on the outside the waist area so it doesn't have like a sharp edge. Yeah, so the next thing I do is mark my neck width 2½ inches, neck depth ½ inch. I join with my French curve, making sure it's not too curvy, and then I go ahead and do my shoulder slant of ½ inch, and I join those points. So the next thing I do is to cut the pattern I have drawn out. And basically that's it for the back, and this is how it looks. So the next thing to do is to cut out the front using my back. So I fold it back and I place it 2 inches apart from the fold, or 2 inches distance away from the fold, and that 2 inches will form my button lap, and then I cut. So I'm going to go ahead and do my neck width and neck depth for my for the front part, which is 2½ inches on both sides. Use my French curve to curve it out, and then I'm going to cut the neck portion out for shirts, the neck portions are not so high, and I go ahead and divide the front part into two. The next thing I do is to measure the length of my arm sky, and I'm going to be dividing into two. I have 9 there, so I'm going to go with 4.5. Yeah, so 4.5 for both sides. This is because I'm going to be doing the faux yoke pattern, and then I join both points. So I'll be using this African print fabric to do the faux yoke design. So I'm going to cut the fabric out about 1.5 inches, and then I divide that 1.5 inches into 3, so half inch on the fabric, and then the first half inch I'm going to make sure the line is aligned properly to the line on the denim fabric. It's very, very important, and I make sure that happens by using a pin to put that in place. The next thing I'm going to do is sew along that line first. So you need to make sure it is straight so it doesn't look tacky. So I go ahead and cut off a 1/4 inch on both sides, so I'll be able to fold it in, as I didn't want that this thing to be, I didn't want it to be very, very wide. I wanted it really small, so I had to cut a 1/4 inch out on both sides. And then I go ahead and do a top stitch. So I do a top stitch to seal the fabric on this end, and I do a top stitch on the other side, so it really looks nice and flat as well. So I'm going to snip off those excesses once I'm done. And then the next night, I've already marked my darts. And if you don't know how to construct the darts, is in the part 2 of my basic bodies drafting tutorial. So right here, I'm going to stitch from the apex to the widest part, and then when I get them, making sure the needle is still in the fabric, I stitch all the way down as well. So normally if you just have one apex, you sew from the widest part first to the apex. Now I'm going to be drawing out like a curve, so I mark 2.5 inches off the bottom of my shirt. I want it to look really curvy, and then I use my French curve to join it from that 2.5 inch that I have marked and all the way to the bottom of the shirt. And I'm going to be doing this for both the back and the front portion of the shirt. And then I cut it out. So this is what I have. The next thing I do is to join my shoulders of both the back and the front pieces by 1/2 inch. Remember, I gave 1/2 inch allowance to my fabric, so I'll be able to join them. So once I'm done with my shoulders, I go ahead and fold my button lap first by 1/2 inch all the way to the marking on that line. I use my pin to hold it in place, and then I do like a top stitch. So I use my fingers to feel the bulge on the other side so I don't sew out of place. And then while I sew, I remove the pins as I sew along. So using my fingers using the bulge as a guide to making sure I stitch the fabric really well. That helped me a lot. So I go ahead and top stitch the other side so the button lap stays flat. I do the same for the other button lap as well. The next thing I do is to hem the bottom. I'll be using the same method I used to stitch my button lap for the bottom of this shirt. So I do a top stitch first to close the seam, or sorry, to hem the fabric, and then I do a top stitch on the other side so that it stays flat. That's basically the reason, and then it gives this denim-y look to it. So I do this for both the front piece and the back piece of the shirt. It all has to be uniform, really. So this is how it looks, guys. After this, I'll be joining my shirt, front and back pieces, the sides, by 1/2 inch. Remember, I gave 1 inch allowance before, but I didn't want it to be too fitted, so I'll be joining by 1/2 inch on both sides. The next thing I do is to fold in the raw edges of my inseam for the sides. I fold in the raw edges and I do a top stitch for that. This is because I didn't want to serge the edges. I wanted to give it a clean, sort of a clean look inside. That's why I used this method. Sorry, this part of the footage isn't so clear, but you get what I'm saying. So I just fold it in, do a top stitch from top to bottom. And then once I'm done with this, I turn it over to the right side of the fabric, and then I sew or I stitch close to the inseam, so it gives it this double stitch sort of look. Yeah, so that's basically what I do, and I do the same thing for the shoulder joining as well. So this is it, guys, and that's the shoulder joining. So in my next video, I'm going to be showing you how I draft my sleeve, how I attach it, how I do the pockets. Basically, that's it. So thank you for watching.